Hi, I'm Heather.
And I'm Paul, and welcome back to another Evolve to Win show. This is episode 89.
We're creeping up on 100
Yeah,
here.
today we're going to discuss a really cool topic, something that has blown many people's minds in the sporting world, but also relates back to business.
Unless you have been going without any sort of news or media within the last week or so, you know that the sub 2 hour marathon has just been hit by a man named Eliud Kipchoge. And it is, well, first of all, if you have ever run any sort of distance, whether you've done a 5K or a half or a full, you really can appreciate what it's like, the training, the intensity, the mindset, everything that goes into running an event like that. But to think about the barriers that were just broken by this man and how hard he worked, we just want to break it down a little bit and talk about exactly what he did, how he did it, why he did it, and how that applies to you, really, because this all comes back to you. And I think, the very first thing that comes to my mind when I heard about this, I guess it was a week ago Saturday this happened now, was just, what are your limits? What barriers do you put up there, and what are your limits? This guy, he conquered a sub 2 hour marathon, which means that on average, he was running a 4 minute and 35-second mile. Now,
That's
just
amazing.
try to get your mind around that one for
So
a
this
minute.
is even more about mindset than anything, because many of you know, and we've talked about in our podcast before, the Roger Bannister story of him breaking. So that was a runner back in 60s,
50s
maybe
or
50s,
60s.
yeah, where he broke the 4 minute mile. So the 4 minute mile was, at a certain point, doctors and other types of people that were in the medical industry were saying that it was impossible for somebody to break a 4 minute mile, that their hearts would explode, that their bodies could not hold up. And
Yeah, like physically, that a human being could not run a sub 4 minute mile.
Right.
Right.
And so
when
then
he did that, I actually have a statistic that I can throw in here that is up to date on how many people have actually broken that 4 minute barrier. The latest statistic that I pulled was that more than 1,400 people have now broken that 4 minute barrier, meaning they've run a mile in 4 minutes or less. And 10 of those people were in high school when they broke it.
yeah.
So
And also but the most important, I guess, statistic about that as well is that once he broke that, and the mindset was broken for others, that it was possible, that this could be done. There were like 24 people that had broke or 4 minute miles that following year.
So how much does it have to do with physical capability, and how much does it have to do with your belief system? And I think the answer is both, but that the mindset piece really is the critical piece, because here's what I can promise you is that Eliud Kipchoge would not have broken that sub 2 hour marathon if he hadn't really been intent, if he hadn't decided that that was a goal that he was after. That was a barrier that he wanted to break through. And when you look at all that he did from an action planning activity kind of standpoint, it is ridiculous the amount of training and every little bit that went into his physicality for how he was able to do it. But all of that really could not have happened if he didn't have the belief, right? That he could do it.
Yep.
And so I want to just share a little bit of background on Eliud Kipchoge for those of you who haven't followed the story. And quite frankly, I pulled a lot of this information off of just doing research the following day. So my guess is they've probably done a lot more stories since then. But the thing that we do know about him is that he did not grow up as a marathoner, right? He was an Olympic athlete, and he was running shorter distances.
Yeah, and he's from Kenya.
He's from Kenya.
Come on, everybody who runs marathons is Kenyan. I have a quick funny story about that before you go into
Okay,
any more
please
detail about it.
tell. I have no
I
idea what you're
ran
about to
a
tell.
marathon back in 2004. The marathoners get, the top performing runners, the Olympic athletes, the guys that are going for the records are always in the front, right? They start, and then the scrubs are in the back. You're just based on how many. Basically, it's your time per mile, and I was like around a 10-minute mile, and so I got put sort of in the middle of the pack of the thousands and thousands of people that were there, and so the fast runners go first. I remember seeing as I was running, we were probably into mile 1 or 2, and it was starting to thin out a little bit. And I remember seeing and looking up to my left and seeing the other side of the street. So we were running parallel streets, and I just saw these flashes going by. And I was like, are those the other runners? And they were already on mile 10 because I knew the track of the course. I knew where they were. They were on mile 10, and we were on mile 1. The way we got interested in this really is I was watching a video, because when we found out this happened, there was a guy who did a great video on how fast they actually run.
So what they were trying to display for us mere mortals is how fast Eliud Kipchoge was actually running to be able to complete the marathon in less than 2 hours. And the answer is he was running a 4-minute and 35-second pace on average, which is, okay, imagine the last time you were running on your treadmill. If you're one of the Orange Theoryers, you know exactly what your pace is and what your all out is. By the way, my highest all out right now is an 8 miles per hour. And I'm kind of afraid I'm going to fall off the treadmill at that speed. So that's really weak. But the speed of these of Eliud Kipchoge at a 4-minute and 35-second pace is 13.1 miles per hour.
That's insane.
I know for a fact I would.
It's basically a full-on sprint.
Beyond a full-on sprint.
Yeah, I mean,
for most of us,
as fast as you can run, and that's for somebody who's in good shape.
That's someone who's a runner. Yeah. So this video that Paul's talking about, this guy shows you what a 13.1 mile per hour pace is, and he could only do it for not even 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And the other marathoners couldn't do it. No one could do it for a full minute. And this guy did it for 2 hours straight.
Yeah.
Like an hour
and made
59.
it look easy.
Yeah. And you don't even notice it. So I think that's really interesting, because if you saw the news coverage and you see him running in, he looks like he's at a jog almost. I mean, he looks like it's so easy. But anyway, let's get back to a little bit more of his story and why I am just so inspired by him. So he won a bronze and a silver in the 2004 and 2008 Olympics for the 5,000 meter.
Yep.
Now, 5,000 meter, that's a short distance. I mean, relatively speaking, right? Guy's not a marathoner. And he did not qualify for the 2012 London Olympics, which I can't even comprehend that he wouldn't qualify for the London Olympics.
There's a lot of good runners in Kenya.
Come on. So think about this. The average person probably would have just hung up their running shoes and maybe just started running for fun, but maybe give up on some of the ridiculous amount of competition. He'd already done Olympics twice. But no, not this guy. He decides to pivot, and instead of doing the shorter 5,000 meter run, he's like, well, why don't I try marathoning? Let's try road running. Let's see how I do there. So honest to God, this guy just changed his strategy. He changed his sport, started doing road running, and next thing you know, he's winning marathons and winning marathons and winning marathons. And that's when it became apparent to him that he was good enough and fast enough, and that he could actually test the limits. And so, couple thoughts too about what he did in training to make this happen. I don't have his full story, and I'm sure we can look up and get a lot more detail about it. But he had been trying for this sub 2 hour for quite some time, and had actually set up some private events and done a number of things to try to break that record. But the most recent event that he did, was it I know it was in Europe. Was it in Austria?
Yeah, it was in Austria.
What he did is he had a whole team of people who he trained with, and he had a whole team of people who were running in and out as his pacers. Now think about this. The world's most elite runners, most elite athletes, were his pacers, if that's what you call them. Basically, the guys who were running with the car, which had this big board on it telling them exactly what their pace was and telling them where to be.
Right.
So it was his major competitors, right? So around the world, the top runners who were in competition with him, they actually joined in on his team because they wanted to see him break this barrier.
Right.
So I just thought that, I get choked up even thinking about it. So inspiring how many people came together and how many people on his team ran with him daily. The number of trainings, they did about 140 miles per week in their training runs at a high elevation, so that when they did get to Austria, it was easier to breathe and
More oxygen in his body, yeah.
So that's the equivalent, by the way, of 5 marathons per week on average.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible story, and it's a massive breakthrough for humanity. I mean, to do a sub 2 minute hour marathon has been a goal for a long time, and they thought it was going to happen more incrementally. I think it was like 2 hours and 2 minutes or 2 hours and 3 minutes. They thought they were going to take off like 30 seconds at a time, or maybe 20 seconds, and he just busted through it. So that really like begs the question of, where's your mindset around your business, around your life, around your goals, the things that that you think aren't possible for you, or maybe you haven't even considered that it's a possibility.
I think one of the things that happens is we kind of get a little bit complacent, right? I just had a conversation with a new client about this, where they had been really, really good at setting their professional goals, but because the company did, right?
Yep.
But recognize that they had not had a compelling personal goal in front of them they couldn't remember how long it had been. And this was a person who actually really needed a goal that was compelling to feel good about herself. So, I just wonder how many of you actually are coming into the end of the quarter. So we're actually ending the decade, right? We've got just a couple months left of the decade. And are you just going to come in at a comfortable pace? Because there's still plenty of time to set something out there for yourself, something big. You've got a couple months. What would it mean to you to take whatever is important for you, whether it's already a goal that you have, or maybe something you've been thinking about, but you haven't actually reduced it to writing yet? Is there something that you could put out there by year end or decade end that would actually make a really, really big difference in your world? And I think about 3 different buckets for goals. I think about personal goals, professional goals, and relationship goals.
Yeah.
And I think with those 3 buckets, it covers kind of everything. So, do you have something at stake for you before the end of the decade that would be so meaningful?
Do you?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
We kind of have something, yeah.
We're actually kind of have something. Come on. We have something actually really big. In fact, we're in the process right now of completing a 3-part series that we're going to give away, right? That has to do with goal setting, that has to do with the methodology for how you can get clarity on what it is you want in those 3 categories. Because the hardest question that anyone has to answer when we first start working with them
is, what do you want?
And I don't know.
It really is.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like that should be a very difficult question, especially for people who are in business, who are already top performers, and or entrepreneurs.
I think it's such a daunting question, because there are so many things out there, and we are, for the most part, we are not focused on one thing. We have a lot of different focuses. Can you even have that?
No,
you can't. You have a lot of different things going.
Remember, the word priority in its origin is singular. It did not have a plural, but we somewhere along the way made it priorities, which when you think about it, that sort of defeats the purpose.
Right.
So thinking about what your priority is in each of those areas. Look, I think what happens is, if we don't set our minds on what we want, then first of all, we know we get whatever we get. But I think what happens is, that's when all the doubt creeps in. That's when the negativity creeps in. If you're not waking up every day really after something that matters to you, it's kind of like if you have a vacant fertile field. Mm-hmm. If you're not planting something that's a very specific crop, what grows in that field?
Weeds.
Yeah, weeds.
Because we get them all over, because it rained all weekend.
Most people say nothing, but You're right. It's weeds. Weeds grow and they take over, because that's what happens. Like, we're creative beings. And so if we're not directing our thought towards what we want, then that's when all that other stuff creeps in.
Yeah.
So, all right, be thinking about what your most important goal is, personally, professionally, and in your relationships. And some of you are sitting there going, "Ooh, relationships. I don't have any relationship goals." And the question is, but should you? Because relationships are really, really important in your world. And they make a massive impact on who you are personally and who you are professionally too, by the way.
Yeah, so if you're interested in getting that 3-part series, we have a website that you can go to, which is winthequarter.com. That's winthequarter.com. And it hasn't been released yet, but you are on the waiting list if you go there and register.
And we will send that out to you for free, because what we really, really want is we want to help people get to a whole different level of success. And we want to give you our tested and proven methodology. I think what happens so often is that people, when they set goals, if they set goals, they do it one time per year, which is typically on New Year's Eve, and maybe get fired up about that goal for a little while, but then something happens throughout the year and they lose focus. Well, part of the reason that a lot of people fail at the goals that they set is because they're setting them on an annual basis only.
Yeah.
And they're not chunking it down by quarter. And the thing is, 1 year is just too long. It's too long for us human beings to stay focused. What do we have, a 7-second attention span?
What?
What are you talking about? Okay. So anyway, we're going to teach you a methodology that really helps you to chunk it down into quarters and help you be way more successful. And you know what the key to success is, I believe. And this is something that I got a long time ago from Earl Nightingale. It's not about achieving the goal. It's about being in progress toward a very meaningful goal. So as Paul said, think about putting something out there that actually scares you. Like, what would happen if you put something out so big that it was scary, it was exciting, and maybe you didn't actually accomplish the whole goal, but how much more progress could you make? I mean, just getting in momentum is when you feel that feeling of success.
Yeah.
So,
hey, well, thank you so much for joining us for another Evolve to Win show. This is episode 89. And if you liked it, please share it. You can also download on any Google Play, on iTunes, and on YouTube. You can catch us there. So subscribe and hit the little bell, and you'll get notified when we release a new video, we're doing one basically every day. So,
yeah. And congratulations, Eliud Kipchoge. We are so inspired by you. Thank you for helping us to see what's possible and the limiting beliefs that we put in front of us that just don't need to be there. So you guys have an awesome day.
Bye now.